Welcome back to a brand new edition of Views from the Booth. I'm your host, Reed Becker, and joining me today, we have Jeremy Steinman and Carson Shahrabani. First, guys, thank you so much for joining me today. But let's get right into it because the NBA, while the rest of the world is dealing with COVID and affecting the entire world right now, the NBA is right in the midst of it as well. And we'll talk about all the teams and all how the season's been going so far for all of them. But let's just start first with how COVID's been affected them in general. I mean, so right now you have the NBA, Adam Silver saying 97% of the players are at least vaccinated. But on top, even because of that, they're still having to postpone games and players getting put into protocols left and right. Now, the big news that came out yesterday was that the CDC said that they are shortening the quarantine time period from 10 days to 5 days. So the NBA did follow that lead by the CDC, but it's still a hot mess right now. The big question, I guess, for me is, should A, the NBA shut down, and then B, does this season, which I think is what a lot of NBA fans are asking, will this season have an asterisk next to it, as there's been a debate for the last couple of seasons? I'll just start right here. I don't think they'll shut down. Adam Silver flat out said right on NBA Today that they won't shut down because they don't want to lose another dollar. He won't say that, but that's really the bottom line. And then on the second part, in terms of will this season be an asterisk? I mean, I am getting really tired of people about always being these discussions of an asterisk. I understand now this is to the point where, I mean, on Christmas Day, for crying out loud, you had the Atlanta Hawks going up against the Knicks. Jeremy, you were there, I know. And the Hawks were without 99% of the roster, you could say, of who they had on that team when they beat the Knicks in the playoffs, which was supposed to be that rematch. And then you had in Los Angeles, the Lakers going up with their G League roster minus LeBron James and Russell Westbrook against a star-studded Brooklyn Nets team who also had part of it, a G League roster. Jeremy, I'll start with you since you were there.
Yeah, so I mean, there's star players out left and right for pretty much every squad at this point. Everyone seems to either be just coming out of an outbreak, in the midst of an outbreak, or there's an outbreak looming. It's definitely not what you want to see. However, I do think that, like, if we can get through this rough patch and be done with it before, like, later in the season and the playoffs, that can, like, help it not have to be an asterisk on, like, this season and whoever the champion ends up being. If it's like in the next few months, we can be close to done with these sort of outbreaks and COVID protocols. But yeah, I mean, I know I have tweet notifications on for Adrian Wojnarowski. It feels like every 5 minutes it's a new one or two guys who are just out for COVID protocols, and it's just not what you want to see.
Carson, go ahead.
I mean, like, obviously, like Jeremy said, like, every team has player with COVID and stuff like that, but I feel like it will slow down. And, there's already, like, since it started kind of like whatever, like a week or two ago, like, these players are already coming back. And, like, I think you'll continue to see that. And, like, yeah, every team has COVID, and I don't think they'll I don't think money is like a major factor to it. I feel like if they needed to stop the season, they would, no hesitation. And
Why
I just
haven't
don't,
they?
because they don't need to.
Why? Every
Season,
team is testing positive left and right.
they don't need to stop the season. They could suspend the season for like a week or two, but from what I've seen, a lot of teams do have these players playing, and most of these players are coming back. Like it's going to slow down, and they don't need to stop anything. And there definitely won't be no asterisks or nothing like that.
Wait a second. If they're willing to stop the season, why would you not do it now? I mean, you had the Atlanta Hawks head coach, what I saw yesterday, said they
don't need
to shut
to.
down the season. And on top of that, you have teams jotting out G League rosters, and on top of it, on Christmas Day, when that's the NBA's big day. Why would you not do it now then?
I mean, they're canceling games, but you don't need to suspend the season for 2 weeks. You just don't need to. You can run those
The
games.
NHL did it.
Yeah, I don't know the NHL situation, but I assume it's much worse than the NBA's. You know, the NBA just runs out these G League rosters and doesn't care.
I mean, yeah, I definitely think money's a factor in that. The NBA lost a lot of money last time, and it's not even just like the people at the top. Like the NBA is like an organization that employs like so many different peoples when it like, I mean, if you like dive deeper into it, like the equipment managers at like every stadium and like the ball boys, like a lot of people will be out without money, without a job. So the NBA definitely doesn't want to suspend their season. But also I think like the somewhat silver lining within all of this is that like a lot of G Leaguers guys and guys who have been out of the league for a while and trying to make comebacks have been given shots
I agree with
to
that.
get back to the NBA. Like you've seen Isaiah Thomas, you see numerous guys called up from the G League. Even Joe Johnson got a call up recently, which was pretty bizarre seeing as he hasn't played in about 4 years. So while this is just like a weird time in NBA history, there has been somewhat of a silver lining in it.
I agree with that. I agree with that part. And I saw a stat that this has been like the most, paraphrasing here, around the most amount of different players played in NBA season in NBA history. What I'll say about, just going back to Carson's point, though, is about the money part. First of all, every league is lost money during 2020. So they're all in the same boat. So, I mean, to me, the only real reason is that they don't want to lose money. And I think if they had to shut down the season, now would be the time, especially now with all the holidays and people going to see their families and getting exposed that way. But I agree with Jeremy on that point. You have Isaiah Thomas that got called back to the Lakers in the NBA after dominating in the G League, I'm pretty sure it was. And then you had Otto Porter coming to a 10-day deal with the Golden State. And then you got with the Brooklyn Nets, Langston Galloway. You might remember with the Knicks. And he dominated against LeBron and the Lakers. But let's transition now to speaking of LeBron, because the Lakers, they're a hot mess. They finally beat the Houston Rockets after a big losing streak, but they barely even beat them last night in Houston after almost blowing it. I'm going to start with the Lakers here because obviously they're LeBron's team, but they're a mess. So I'll start with LeBron. Obviously, none of this, I mean, his performances are quite honestly, just getting wasted by his team. He's still putting up the top numbers in the league, or one of them at least, but they're just not good enough. First of all, they're the oldest team in the NBA. And then on top of that, they're getting destroyed with COVID, guys getting put in COVID protocol, testing positive, although a lot of teams still are. And that's where I want to go with this, because LeBron he's a great player, but he doesn't know when to talk and not to talk. He's like that little 12-year-old at the dinner table that will say anything that doesn't know when it's appropriate to talk and not to talk about anything. But because of that, there was the game against, I'm pretty sure it was against Brooklyn on Christmas Day. He went on after the game to the media and said, basically complained and said, we're getting just decimated with COVID. We're the only team basically just complaining that they have no chemistry because of COVID, and that every team has COVID except for Golden State, which factually was not true because Andrew Wiggins was in COVID and Draymond Green just went to COVID, and yet they're still the top of the league. So my point is, when you look up the definition of Crimea River on dictionary.com, or if you still have a dictionary, LeBron's face will still be on it, because that is the definition. LeBron James, because that is the definition of Crimea River. You can't, this is what drives me nuts. You can't be complaining about that when every other team in the league is dealing with it. Look at the Brooklyn Nets. The Brooklyn Nets are the first number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. They just were, for the past couple of games, were without Kyrie Irving, who had not been getting vaccinated, Kevin Durant, and they were, for the most part, besides James Harden, having a G League roster. On top of that, look at the Suns. DeAndre Ayton just went into protocol. Their head coach just went into protocol. He doesn't hold water against anything in this argument.
Yeah, I definitely think that LeBron maybe could have phrased what he was trying to say better. But like at this point, everyone's struggling with COVID. So like it's kind of hard to determine like who's the best team, like who's this, because there's all these asterisks over all these games. However, like one thing I will say about the Lakers roster is that like to begin with, they already don't have team chemistry at all, if I'm going to be frank. I mean, I'm looking at the roster now. 3 guys were on the team last year. That's Anthony Davis, LeBron James, and Talon Horton-Tucker. Now, Anthony Davis is already out with an injury for at least 4 more weeks, or 4 weeks total. So that's LeBron, Talon Horton-Tucker, and everyone else is a player that was not on the team last year. So, and this seems to be a common theme with LeBron, as like, or not LeBron, but LeBron teams is like last year they had a completely new roster and they had no team chemistry again. So I think it takes time. I think they need to get some more experience playing with each other, and COVID is definitely not helping that. So they need to just have more of the season to learn how to play with each other, figure each other out, and go on from there.
I agree with that. They have Rajon Rondo just went into protocol. You have guys like looking at it here, you got Malik Monk's just signed to a 10-day deal, and Stanley Johnson also on a 10-day deal, who are both starting in the lineup. So you have G League guys in your starting lineup. But on top of that, you have Russell Westbrook, who a lot of people thought was going to be the answer for their big 3, but so far has not. I mean, you had the game on Christmas, he gets denied by the rim, cost them the game there. And just in general, this season has not been the answer for their third missing piece. And quite honestly, in my opinion, I would say that he does not fit, even when they were on the floor together, the 3 of them, does not fit with LeBron or AD. Because first of all, LeBron, to me, needs the ball in his hand, bringing it up the court. He won't say he's a point guard, but anyone that watches LeBron and the Lakers knows throughout his career is pretty much a point guard. And Westbrook also needs the ball in his hand. So the only way I see this working is if Westbrook comes off the bench, and I know he won't be doing that. And he's also a terrible shooter, but I don't think it works. And I won't say they need to trade him yet, but it has definitely been a big disappointment bringing him to LA.
Right. I would agree with that, Reed. Like, I feel like the only thing you can blame is Russell Westbrook not fitting in with this team. Because even obviously Anthony Davis is, top 10 player in the league, and they're missing him right now. Even when they had him, like, they were still like a 500 team, losing a lot of games they should win. And like, you have these 3 Hall of Famers on your team, the GOAT James, like, there's no reason you should be losing these games. Like, and it just really comes down to like LeBron chose Russell Westbrook and his $50 million contract. Like, who else is making money on that team? Like, they have Malik Monk, Wayne Ellington. Like, these are the guys that are taking shots for them. Like, this is not a winning formula, in my opinion.
They also lost Alex Caruso because they didn't want to pay him the tax, and then they let him go to Chicago. And then they lost. Hold on.
Contract on their thing is obviously the big 3 making whatever, like $140 million combined, and then they got Talon Horton-Tucker making like $8 million a year. Everybody else was making the minimum, and then people wonder why they have no defense, why they have no chemistry, why they have no shooting, because their 4th best player is 80-year-old Carmelo Anthony, and Wayne Ellington's
and that was LeBron's choice.
Carmelo's playing well this year.
LeBron's choice was to get Carmelo.
Carmelo's been their 2nd best player this season,
which is sad.
The thing I'll say about Russell Westbrook is I do think this is a little bit of an overreaction. I mean, Westbrook's a guy, if you look at his last few years, look at the Rockets, he started off pretty terribly with them, and then turned things around and was putting up MVP numbers pretty much right before the season got shut down. If you look last year with the Wizards, he closed out the season having them win 10 straight to put them in the play-in, and he was putting up huge triple-doubles every single game. He was one of the best players in the entire league at that point. I think as the season winds that down and we get closer to playoff time, Russell Westbrook will show up. I don't know if he'll show up in the playoffs. That's a different discussion, but end of the season, March, April, that's when Russell Westbrook shines, and I think he just needs his time.
2 things. First of all, Houston, last time I checked, he did not win. B, in Washington, the only reason he was doing that is because he was the only best player on the G League roster, minus Bradley Beal.
Yeah, but they were winning games.
Yeah, because he was leading the way. He can't do that with LeBron now. There was a player I saw yesterday also. I forget who it was, but and it's true. He's a stat patter. He's a great player, but he's a stat patter. Every team he's been with, he hasn't won a championship. But and that's just what he's been.
Yeah, but I mean, that just speaks well. I mean, like Westbrook isn't a championship player leading a team. I don't think that's like. I mean,
Right,
there's
but
only
I'm
a
saying
select
that
few guys that can.
you have okay, but then I'm saying that you have him now with LeBron, and if AD comes back, and I'm telling you that there's no way he's going to be able to help a team as second or third fiddle
I
for a
mean,
guy
that
that
could
needs
be
the ball.
right. They could figure out rotations, be able to play him when LeBron needs his rest. I mean, I think you just got to give it time, see it, let it pan out. I don't think that the experiment can just be pronounced dead after 2 months of the NBA
I
season.
agree with that, but do you think he'll come off the bench?
I don't think he'll come off the bench, but I do think that they'll reach a point where like either he or LeBron is in at all times rather than them playing together as much.
Elaborate.
So like they kind of stagger each other's minutes. So like let's say Westbrook plays 30 minutes a game and LeBron plays 30 minutes a game. So like they'll play like 12 minutes together, but like when one's on the bench, the other one's in the game and the other's on the vice versa.
Right, but who's starting then?
Both will start the game and both will finish the game.
I don't know. That still sounds kind of. I don't see it working with them on the court together. I understand what you're saying, but I just don't. If you're gonna, especially late in the game, if it's a close game like that, I'm not totally sure yet of how that'll come to fruition. But let's move on then with the Lakers, because there's a lot of surprising teams in the NBA so far this season. We'll start out west, a little bit in Northern California, the Golden State Warriors. While the Lakers have been struggling and a lot of people expect them to be great, the Warriors have been surprising a lot of people. Now, for me, I'll just say I thought they were going to be just as this good because yes, they lost Durant and you have Curry, but then you had Klay Thompson coming back. And last time I checked, they were great before they got Durant with the Splash Brothers, which is why people were really annoyed when Durant even went to Golden State in the first place. I understand that you have Klay Thompson, who is coming off of a torn ACL and then tearing his Achilles in the other knee, which made him miss all last season. But I think, first of all, you have Steph Curry leading the way, atop the first seed in the Western Conference, that is. And then you have Klay Thompson coming back. I'll make a prediction here that I think Klay Thompson is going to be just as good as this player he was in 2019, if not better, similar to what Kevin Durant did last season in Brooklyn. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I definitely didn't see this coming from the Lakers. I mean, from the Warriors, at least before Klay Thompson comes back. I thought they would be good. I definitely thought they'd be better than last season, but they've definitely surprised me. Curry's been looking like the MVP, showing everyone why he's one of, if not the best in the world, at least as an offensive player. And yeah, this team just plays well together. They have great chemistry, which is something that I brought up earlier. The Lakers definitely lack. And yeah, I'm excited to see where they'll be when Klay Thompson comes back. I'm also interested to see how their lineup's going to change when Klay Thompson comes back. Like Jordan Poole has been incredible for them and kind of provided something to that offense that they haven't really seen, at least like aside from Durant, where it's like another guy who can create with the ball in their hands alongside Curry. So I'm interested to see who's going to stay in the lineup. I mean, Wiggins, yeah, sometimes he can create, sometimes he can't, but I'm interested to see what happens to the lineup when Klay comes back.
And you have Otto Porter as well.
Yeah.
That's been coming in unexpectedly. Carson, go ahead.
I mean, like Jeremy said, like I actually probably underestimated the Warriors more than anybody, like following the NBA, because like they were not good last year, and they didn't really like change the team that much. Like in fact, they probably subtracted. Like I just don't really understand like why they're like so much better. Like I don't watch these games, but it's very surprising to me to see the Warriors sit at the top of the Western Conference with like 5 losses. You know what I mean?
Well, I'll tell you why. Because Curry got hurt. And then when that happened, everything went south from there. And then you have their depth is probably one of the deepest in the league right now. And I
But
think,
Curry was playing like an MVP last year.
yeah, and then he got
Let's.
hurt. And they added to their depth this season.
Absolutely. You got Jordan Poole playing much better. They needed a guy like that.
Gary
Wiseman.
Payton's been incredible for them as like a rim running guard.
And you have Wiseman, their first rounder from 2 years
They also
ago.
got 2 lottery picks added to the equation, and Moody and Kuminga. So yeah, this is a very deep team, very young team too. So I'm interested to see how far they can go.
Just like people were saying that the Warriors were going to sit atop of the Western Conference, and I wasn't believing. I was not believing, and I was wrong.
Yeah, they're to me, I'll say right now they are the best team in the West. I think the Suns are right there with them, but I mean, after what I saw on Christmas, I mean, it's one game, but I think that star power with the amount of depth that Golden State has come in a 7-game series, which is why I think most people now expect to be Phoenix and Golden State in the Western Conference Finals. I think that's just too much for a team like Phoenix to handle, especially a young team when you have a veteran now with Curry and then Clay coming back. Now, speaking of the Phoenix Suns, though, let me just add this first about the Warriors, though. They are also one of the teams decimated with now Draymond and Jordan Poole, who had been in protocol as well, but they'll be back shortly. Phoenix, neck and neck with Golden State, as we talked about. Monte Williams and DeAndre Ayton are on COVID protocol, but this is another team I think that got overlooked, because of the Lakers, people thinking coming back at full health, but with the Lakers now struggling and Phoenix now right there neck and neck with the Warriors, you have Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton who have been leading the way. They brought back the majority of their pretty much the same roster. The only question, I guess, for the long term with Phoenix here is that DeAndre Ayton, who they did not give a contract extension to, which was pretty surprising considering the domination performance he had in the finals So you have against Milwaukee, that's right.
That's far from domination, but go ahead.
I don't know what you were watching then, at least from the playoffs, even to get into the finals. That's pretty domination. What's that?
He had some good games. He had some bad games as well.
Overall, that's a domination. From what he was when he first came in, he's pretty much developed, and he's one of their faces of the franchise. But we kind of just talked about them a little bit, but how do you guys see them, I guess, going up against Golden State in the 7-game series?
I'm not going to say that they're going to win. I'm not going to say that they're going to lose. I think they have a good fighting chance against Golden State. It's going to be one of those series that just really comes down to like the way the ball bounces and what happens, who stays healthy. There's like a lot of factors. This team went to the finals, was a great team last year, and they kept everyone. They have all their big pieces coming back. They have another year of experience with each other, good team chemistry. There's really no reason as to why they shouldn't go back to the finals other than the Warriors are better than that they were last year. So, this is still a great team. They had like a 17-game winning streak earlier this season, in which they beat the Warriors on. So we'll just have to see how that materializes in the playoffs.
Right. And it's a big if we see them, because they're probably going to be the top 2 seeds, right? So they would need to meet each other in the Western Conference Finals, which is a big if. But if they did, assuming, they're both healthy rosters, I would expect the Warriors to be, a slight favorite in the series, betting favorite. And frankly, I feel like I would take the Phoenix Suns, just because I feel like there was a game where the Suns did a good job at bottling up Curry. He probably had like 14 points. He shot terrible. And I just feel like if you moderately stop Steph Curry, you beat the Warriors. And, I think that the Suns are a more experienced team. I feel like they're a deeper team. I feel like they have more star power. And I would take the Phoenix Suns, in my opinion.
You stop Curry in the 7-game series, but what happens when Clay comes back?
I mean, Clay Thompson. We'll have to see what he's looking like. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
The Warriors have a lot of players coming back, and if they're fully healthy, which obviously is a big if, they're going to be dangerous.
Yeah, Klay Thompson is a big unknown. As much as I want to say he's going to be good and will return to what he is, he's had 2 season-ending injuries back to back. He's on the wrong side of 30. I do think he'll be okay just because of the nature in which he plays by. He's not really like an explosive guy. He's sort of more of a 3-and-D. Not saying that he's not a good player. He's probably the best 3-and-D we've ever seen. But yeah, it's still an unknown, and we have to see what he'll be like when he comes back.
Now let's head out east because these next 2 teams I'm going to be mentioning, I don't think anyone really expected to be this good. We'll start in Cleveland. The Cavaliers, currently 5th in the Eastern Conference, and they've been led by rookie Evan Mobley coming out of USC. And this is something that you don't usually see, a rookie coming out in his first year leading a team towards the playoffs as of right now. Guy can shoot, pass, and defend at multiple positions, and probably is at least one of the runner-ups for Rookie of the Year right now. And you have Jared Allen, who they brought back on a 5-year, $100 million contract extension. So they're one of the top biggest teams, you could say, in the NBA, which in today's NBA is pretty surprising considering with how the game is going. But I mean, Mobley and Allen, really the 1-2 punch in Cleveland right now. You have JB Bickerstaff, the head coach running the show there, just got the extension on Christmas Day. This kind of reminds me with how the Cavs are going, and then the team we'll mention after this is how with the Atlanta Hawks last season, who aren't playing as good as they were last season, but surprised a lot of people last year and wound up going to the Eastern Conference Finals. I'm not saying they can go that far, but this has a little bit of a sense of how that went last year.
Right, and I would love to see the Cavs get a good series for them. I would love to see them not be in the play-in, and maybe they somehow get the Bulls, or I feel like they could stand a chance against the Bulls. Honestly, the Bulls, they haven't been in the playoffs. I would give the Cavs a shot. I love Evan Mobley. Me and Jeremy go to college in Ohio, and I like Cleveland teams and stuff like that. But regardless, Evan Mobley, he's just like a bona fide stud. That guy is already one of the best defenders in the league. You can just tell that guy is going to be a demon for years to come. And then, in my opinion, their best player is easily Darius Garland. That guy
who just went to protocol, but go ahead.
Yeah, that guy is going to be a top 5 point guard in the league one day. And he's already playing at an all-star level. And he's the main reason why they are the 5th seed right now, because he's playing so good.
Yeah, I definitely have been shocked by what the Cavs have been doing this year. At the beginning of the season, it was sort of like you saw them draft Evan Mobley 3rd overall, which I thought was a fantastic pick and is proved to be so. And then you see them sign Jarrett Allen to a 5-year extension and go out and get Larry Markkinen. And you're just like, what are they doing? Like,
and
why
they
are
hold on to Kevin Love.
Yeah, and they hold on to Kevin Love. I mean, they even signed Taco Fall, not that he gets minutes, but you're just like, what are they doing? What do they need all these bigs for? And clearly they were doing something right. Darius Garland's been great. Ricky Rubio is having a career revival right now on the Cavs. And this is just like a fun team to watch. They all play for each other. They all like each other. And I want to say that they're going to go far, but honestly, they're playing great right now and they're the 5th seed. And I see the Heat, I see the Bucks, the Bulls, the Nets all in front of them. I don't see them passing any of those teams in the standings, which means that they'll be matched up against one of those teams in the first round. So just looking into the future, I don't know how good it looks for them, but definitely been a very pleasant surprise to see how they've been. And they're just a very fun team to watch.
And I'll say that I think bringing in Rubio definitely helped remake Kevin Love's career in Cleveland, because obviously their experience together in Minnesota. And I think that's played a big part in having Kevin Love get back to his old self. But let's head out now to the other surprising team, which I had mentioned, hinted at earlier, the Chicago Bulls, because this one is pretty shocking. Sitting at the number 2 seed in the East, right behind the Brooklyn Nets. You got DeMar DeRozan, who, coming from San Antonio, had a down year ever since he pretty much left Toronto. And what a story that's been. Leaves Toronto, never wins the championship with Lowry, goes to San Antonio, not the same player, and then comes to Chicago and is probably one of, if not the best player on the Bulls right now, averaging 27 points a game. And then they bring on Zach LaVine, developing into a better player from what he was in Minnesota, averaging 26.4 a game. And then, oh, by the way, Lonzo Ball comes from New Orleans, and he's also 13.2. So they're kind of, I don't want to say a big three, but they have a mini big three in the sense that it's anyone's night at any point. It could be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this team has. I definitely thought I could see them going far this year. They looked like a team that just like went out and got a lot of pieces that would like mesh together very well. I definitely didn't see them being this good, as I think they sit like second in the standings right now. They are. I think this is like the perfect sort of situation for a guy like DeMar DeRozan, who is sort of being played out of the NBA these days with like his lack of range, but like he's almost their starting power forward, which is like a really cool role for him. They also got Vucevic, who he can go off on any given night if the matchup's right. And something that should be mentioned is they're doing all of this without Patrick Williams, their 4th overall pick from 2020, who I thought was going to take a big leap this year, but he had a season-ending injury early on, and they haven't missed a beat. They've got good depth. They've got Caruso, Cody White off the bench. I mean, this is a fun team. I think they could get some wins in the playoffs. We'll see how far they go.
Right, and I feel like they definitely have a very good big three. I feel like those 3 guys, especially DeRozan and LaVine, are just like bona fide stars, superstars. Yeah. And Vucevic, who has gone underrated in his career, he's one of the best centers in the league, no doubt in my mind. He's easily a top 5 center, maybe even better, and he really makes them dangerous, in my opinion.
I don't know about that, but okay. Let's then go back from between the Cavs and who also have not made the playoffs without LeBron since 1998, and then you have the Bulls. Between those 2 teams, which one would you say has a better chance as of right now to be the Atlanta Hawks from last year and go farther?
I'd say the Bulls, just because of, first of all, like as the standings look right now, which is obviously could go in any direction as the season goes on. There's so many unknowns, but the Bulls would have better matchups. But the Bulls, they sort of just have that star power. They have that it factor. Like Chicago's like a franchise that has been experienced a lot of winning. Like they have that home crowd in the United Center. Like they know how to win. And I just like their team. I think they play very well together.
And I would agree with that. I feel like the Bulls has easily a chance to go farther, but it's hard to compare them to the Hawks because like no one had any idea what the Hawks were. I feel like coming into this season, you got to say that the Bulls were probably the 3rd favorites to come out of the East. Like, it's not like the Hawks, like they were projected to be, like barely make the playoffs, stuff like that. So
I don't think people expected the Bulls to be the 2nd team in the Eastern Conference, though.
Absolutely. I feel like they were no doubt the 3rd favorite, though, in my opinion.
I don't know about that. You had Brooklyn, you got Milwaukee.
And then you got no one else. Like, that really compares with the Bulls. I think they're 3rd.
The Heat, even still, the Heat, once it's playoff time, they could go.
Never count out Eric Spoelstra-led team.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Especially with Kyle Lowry now.
Exactly. Now, let's just start. While we're on the Eastern Conference, let's just start with this one. Favorites to come out of the Eastern Conference. I'll start here. I'm still going to go with Brooklyn. I'm well aware that you have Durant and Kyrie have been in protocol, and I'm well aware that Kyrie has been refusing to get vaccinated, although he just came back, which I'm just going to quickly talk about that actually before we even get to this, because this whole Kyrie thing is pretty ridiculous on the Nets' part. And I get why they opted to bring him back now, because in their perspective, that you got Durant, who they're running out there night in, night out, playing too many minutes, and then you got, and then pretty much you're losing guys left and right with COVID. So you have this guy sitting at home that is one of the top players that you bring him back. But at the same time, you, in the beginning of the season, said, we're not letting him come back to just be a part-time player on the road, and he needs to be vaccinated. You're either in or you're out. And they completely did a 180 on that. And I understand that the NBA is a business, the Brooklyn Nets are a business, and I'm well aware that since this has happened, the entire point of this has been they were waiting to do this on their timeline and see that, and realize themselves that you can't be running Durant out there all the time. And they really were getting Durant's input in their ear to let him come back, because that was a package deal when they signed. But it just sounds an awful look to the league and just the country in general. Not to get too political, but like, you got the Omicron variant now spreading like rapid fire, and you're going to bring back a guy who's unvaccinated and happens to get put in health and safety protocol before he can even hit the court, which to me is pretty hilarious. Shocker there, though. And then you're just going to bring him back like it's nothing. I think that Sean Marks has to be called to the table for that. Joe Tsai as well. Steve Nash, they all got to be called to the table. And when Kyrie Irving comes back to talk to the media, he has a lot of explaining to do. And you can't force someone to get vaccinated and not get vaccinated. I get all that. But if you're going to bring him back and then you're going to let him come back with and not do his typical press conference where he doesn't say anything. Oh, by the way, it's already been a distraction for the Nets, who are still top of the Eastern Conference. I get that. But you bring him back, still a distraction. He's back, but he's a part-time player. So, and he's unvaccinated, and you're a part-time player. So it's just an awful look for the Brooklyn Nets. I understand the basketball side of it, but from a reading the room scenario in this country right now, it's awful.
Well, yeah, I think the main reason why they decided to bring Kyrie back is just from like a shortage of players standpoint. I mean, this is like, we're in the point where like teams just need 8 players so that they don't have to forfeit games. And they needed Kyrie. He's just sitting on their roster, not doing anything. And they needed to have another body on the court. So I sort of understand it from that standpoint. However, going back to what you said about them coming out of the East, I really don't know. I don't see anyone stopping Giannis in the playoffs. That's for sure. And it comes down to the Nets might have home court advantage, which might be detrimental to them because Kyrie can't play home games. So what should they tank for the 5th seed so they don't have home court advantage? It's really interesting way to look at it, but like I'm honestly not sure like if them winning games would be beneficial to them if Kyrie is going to be on their team.
Right. And, talking about favorites in the East, I know this might come as a surprise as you see my shirt on, but I'm going to choose who I chose last year to come out of the East, and that's the Brooklyn Nets in my opinion. But also you got to keep in mind that it's such a big if that the Brooklyn Nets big three will be on the court to the point where, they're probably not going to be. And if that's the case, then I'm taking the Bucks.
Wait, hold on. Time out. Carson, you said you're taking the Brooklyn Nets even though you're wearing a Giannis shirt?
Absolutely, yeah. Because they have a big three of just bona fide, NBA super scorers. You know what I mean? Kevin Durant.
Prime.
So then, how come when I said that last season, you said
if
no?
If that team is healthy come playoff time, it's going to be impossible for the Bucks to win that series.
So then, how come when I said that last
Kyrie
season,
Irving was not on the court, and James Harden was not the player he was, and the Bucks barely beat them in 7 games. I see what I'm watching right now. Obviously, Giannis is going to go off because the Nets don't have a Giannis stopper. But like I said, if the Nets are healthy, and that's a big if to the point where I said like it's probably not going to happen. But if they are healthy, then I'm taking the Nets.
All right, time out. First of all, how come last season when I said that you were all Bucks wagon on that side?
Well, I don't remember what I said in your Zooms or whatever, but
Okay.
I was taking the Nets the whole season, and I was wrong. Gladly.
I find that hard to believe. But on the other side of it, though, Jeremy, what you brought up though about Kyrie is interesting, though, and that's the other part about this is that you have the 1 seed, and then I would hope, if you would think just from a human personal standpoint, but also then you have the basketball side of it, is you would hope at some point someone gets in Kyrie's ear and tells him to get vaccinated, just from everything that's going on right now. But then on top of that, I mean, quite honestly, I mean, you could probably just go for the 5th seed, because I mean, I'm just thinking, like, from what the talent that they have on their roster, I don't think it really matters to them if they are the 1 seed or not. And I think they'll probably tell you that too. I don't think they're necessarily going for the 1 seed necessarily. I mean, I think we've seen it in the past, like with LeBron teams, for example, who have not been in the 1 seed and have found themselves in the finals. So I think I wouldn't think that's a bad idea.
Yeah. I mean, right now they're in the 1 seed. They could fall to 2, but like, I mean, if Milwaukee, it all comes down to like who's above them and who they're playing later on. And like, if they're in a 7-game series with a team like Milwaukee, where they have home court advantage, or I might want to say home court disadvantage in terms of how it would work with Kyrie. I don't know if I certainly don't think that that's beneficial to them, and I would see the Bucks coming out. I mean, Giannis versus Kevin Durant is must-see TV. It's probably the 2 best players on the planet right now at basketball, and Giannis came out on top last time. And
Granted, though, 2 of their top 3 were out.
Well,
I could make a big argument if they were healthy, the Nets would have definitely won that series.
Well, all right, that's fair, I guess, but Giannis took a step above even that in the next series of the playoffs and in the finals. And like what the player that I saw in the finals last year, there's no one stopping him. That was one of the most dominant performances I've ever seen of any player in any sport, if I'm going to be honest. And
more than Brady?
No, I said one of.
You said in any sport.
Most. I said one of the most dominant, not the most dominant. Brady's still got that, but that's a different discussion. I truly don't see anyone stopping Giannis if he plays the way he played last year in the playoffs, in the East at least.
I'll close it out this way. I think if it also depends, going back to the Kyrie point, though, is how other cities, if COVID continues to get worse, and then they say that, because right now New York City is the only one that says, from what I'm aware of, is that you have to be vaccinated for all players.
I believe California is also like that, but I could be wrong.
I think LA is that way too, but that's the point. I know Boston went that way, but of course, apparently, it only goes for the home team, I guess, or I don't know, it doesn't affect anyone that way, which doesn't make any sense to me. But the bottom line is it's all going to depend on how these mayors in these cities are going to operate with that as COVID gets worse, which it will. Because if they play Chicago and Chicago gets worse and they put that in place, then yeah, they might be in trouble then against the Bulls too. I mean, it all depends on what these cities decide to do as COVID goes on. But I agree, if Kyrie does, I guess, go to a part-time player, then that'll be a big question, absolutely. The only thing I'll say about Giannis closing this out, though, is the only thing that will stop them is you got to bring the house, but also you got to limit him to jump shots, because he's a great guy getting to the basket, but jump shots, that's still a big question. But shifting to the West then now, lastly, your favorite to come out of the West, we kind of mentioned it with the Western Conference Finals. Let's just do this. Let's go to Western Conference and then Finals matchup as of right now and who's on top.
Personally, I think it will be the Suns that come out. I could really see it go either way. It's kind of just like a toss-up to me at this point between the Suns and the Warriors. But because of the way they did it last year. I'll give the benefit of the doubt to the Suns. And I mean, you already talked about how I saw the Bucks coming out. So yeah, I think it's a finals rematch, but I think the Suns will come out on top this time.
Go ahead, Carson.
It's really tough to say, but I guess I got to choose the Suns too, just because they have they were in the finals last year, and I feel like they could easily do it again. And like Chris Paul's running out of time, and like he's not trying to lose. You know what I mean? And I feel like they have more depth, they have more star power than the Warriors. But I mean, regardless, besides those top two teams, like I wouldn't sleep on the Jazz because the Jazz are in the playoffs every year. But if I were to choose one team, it would definitely be the Suns. And coming out of the East, like I said, could easily be either team, depending on how these rosters are looking like at the end of the year and how it shapes up and stuff like that. But if I were to choose, I would choose the Nets, like I said. So Nets, Suns, and I would definitely have. If the Nets made it all the way to the finals, I would assume that they're healthy. And that would be a quick cleanup on the Suns, in my opinion. I feel like the Nets would win that in 5 or 6, no doubt.
I'll go Nets Warriors. I don't think the Suns are the bigger star-led, bigger, more depth team at all. I think Golden State's more than that. And I'll go Nets Warriors. And assuming that the Nets are healthy, I'll say Brooklyn. And obviously that'll also have to be depending on how the situation with the Kyrie vaccination status and the other San Francisco at that point would be handling it as well. But that is what I have for that. And then Utah, I'll just say they make the playoffs every year, but they always choke.
I would definitely agree. And it would be shocking to see them make the finals, and they always choke. And I always say that they always choke, but at the end of the day, like it's maybe one of these years they just somehow put it together. That's all I'm saying.
Still some time for that. But that is all the time we have for you guys here today. First of all, Jeremy and Carson, thanks for joining me. Happy holidays and happy healthy new year, and as well to the audience as well. For Jeremy Steinman, Carson Shahrabani, I am Reed Becker, and we'll see you next time here on Views from the Booth.